Sure, sure. So yeah, we're going to talk about the pitch deck today. It's one of the four parts or collateral parts that you use when you're out raising money for your company. First you want to create the business plan, and the business plan is really your Bible. That's a comprehensive blueprint of everything you're going to do in your company, including raising money, the market, the research, all your products, patents, whatever you have in there. Your business plan is really important. And then your business plan, once it's done, it gives birth to the executive summary. And the executive summary is a light business plan used along with your pitch deck. And the executive summary, you create the pitch deck out of writing and creating your executive summary. And then you have what is called a fact sheet or a one sheet or a corporate overview, corporate snapshot. But today, as you said, we're going to be particularly talking about the pitch deck, the components that make up the pitch deck. And some people use the pitch deck. Well, first of all, everyone uses a pitch deck when they're out raising their friends and family money. When you go to your friends and family round, they're raising money with a pitch deck. And also when they get into the second round of friends and family, they use it. When you start to get into your first seed round of capital, you want to have your business plan and executive summary completed, and they accompany your pitch deck. So let's get into the pitch deck and let's just really talk about it. First thing you need to know, your pitch deck should not be any longer than 20 pages long. Okay. I've seen pitch decks that have been 22 pages, 25 pages, some even 30. But they say between 15 pages to 20 pages is the length of your pitch deck, because you're just doing the presentation to mostly people in person, and it's a PowerPoint. So when you're done completing it, it is a PowerPoint. So let's look at the first page. So the first page, if we're talking about let's talk about a 14-page PowerPoint today. The first page is a company overview. So the first page would be the title of your company, maybe one little sentence of what the company's about, and then some disclosures and disclaimers about the company. That is your first page. It's the company overview. The second page is your mission statement or your vision of the company. It's just as simple as that. You don't have to be really detailed in your pitch deck. I've seen people where they've tried to cram and stick as much information as they can from their business plan into their pitch deck. And you don't want to get lost in words. You want to actually have more graphics and images in the pitch deck, making your point rather than a bunch of words. So the third page is the team. It's your human capital. It's your executives. It's your chief executive officer, your chief financial officer, your chief marketing officer, your COO. It's the people who you have in your company. Now, I know as a startup, you may not have all those people on board. You can stick your board of advisors on that page, or a board of director, or any consultants you have helping you get through the friends and family round into the seed round. So that's really important. Page 3 is your team. Page 4 is where you announce the problem. So let's say you have a product and you've identified a problem. Well, this is where you want to talk about it. Here's the problem in the software market or the software development market. This is what they're missing. We think we can come up with the solution to solve this. That's the problem. And then obviously it leads into the next page, page 5, which is the solution. How are you going to fix that problem? How are you going to overcome it with your product or your services or your great idea? And then page 6 is the market opportunity. What is the opportunity in the overall market? Is the market asking for this kind of product? And have you done a little bit of research? So that's page 6. Page 7 is your actual product and technology. So you want to talk about your product, show your product, have a photograph of your product or the technology. This is where you can get really graphic with a bunch of flow charts, and you can talk about what it is that what you're raising money for. And then the page 8 is talking about the customers. So do you have any customers? Do you have any, what's your customer profile? Who's your audience? Who are you going to sell to? What's your target group? And then page 9 is the competition. And this is really important. A lot of times when I'm consulting young entrepreneurs and they're building their businesses, sometimes they think, then they'll say, well, I really don't have any competition. Everybody has competition. Everyone has competition. And I know you don't want to talk about your competition, but you have competition. So you want to put it in your pitch deck. It'll be in your business plan. It'll be in your executive summary. You never want to belittle the competition. You always want to talk about them, even though you think you have a superior product or service. So that's on page 9. So page 10 is your traction or sales or market penetration. I know you're a startup company. You may already have some sales, or you may have some committed sales if you get the amount of money. You may have a purchase order that you can get if you have money to help you get there. So in this page, you want to talk about any kind of traction you've gotten in the marketplace, sales, market penetration. And then page 11 is your actual business model. You want to talk about your business and your business model. What are the components of your business? Why do you think you're going to be successful? Number 12 is the marketing plan. Every company has a marketing plan. So page 12 is you want to talk about the marketing, how you're going to go into the markets, which markets you're going to target, who you're going to sell to, demographics, things like that.
Okay.
Page 13 is your financials. And it's only one page dedicated to financials. I know it's not a lot of room for financials. So this is where you want to be really articulate with your bullet points. You want to use pie charts and graphs, and you just want to talk about the highlights of what you think you're going to do in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years in your business. So your projections are in there. Maybe a little bit of a light scenario overview of your use of proceeds. What are you going to use the capital for that you're asking the investors for? That goes on that page. And then page 14, which I think is one of the most critical pages of your entire PowerPoint, which in this case, we're only going to go 14 pages long. It's the page that's called the ask. What are you asking for? I'm asking for $250,000. For $250,000, this is what we think we're going to give up for the company, and this is how we're going to do it. And we're giving away, we're giving equity or stock in the company, or we're doing a convertible debenture or a note. This is where you talk about the ask. So that's your entire PowerPoint. That is the blueprint to build out a PowerPoint. And there's some really great videos out there. If you go on YouTube, there's a lot of people that explain and show you step by step how to do the pitch. But the PowerPoint and the pitch deck are so important. Now, let's talk about some do's. There's some don'ts and there's some do's in having a PowerPoint. So here are some tips. So we'll talk about the do's first. So the first tip is on the cover page, as I talked about, you announce your company, what it is you do. On the cover page, you also want to have confidential and proprietary statement, any copyright, name of the product, and all rights reserved. You probably want to talk to an attorney and get the right verbiage and the right content, but you want to protect your idea. You want to announce your idea, and you want to show that you have protection on it. So that's one of the do's. Here's a really big do in a PowerPoint in the pitch deck. It needs to be visually interesting with graphics and images. You want to have a lot of graphics and images, more so than you may want to have content in it, because you can diagram your ideas a lot easier. Now, here's a very important do. When you're demonstrating the opportunity, when your pitch deck is done and you have some investors lined up, you're going to do either a one-on-one presentation or you're going to do a Zoom call. Do not send the PowerPoint or the pitch deck out to them in advance of your presentation.
Why?
This is really important. And now some people will tell me, no, I always send it out before I do. I say you should never do it. It's just my opinion, because I've pitched a lot of companies before. Because it's kind of a surprise that you're going to present your company to them. But if you send out your pitch deck or PowerPoint to someone and you're not in the room with them and they read that pitch deck by themselves, there may be one thing that kind of stops them from reading the rest or trips them up. It might be a definition or a term. It might be something they don't understand, and they're done. You've lost them. So I say create your pitch deck, line up your Zoom calls, line up your presentations, and then you, the owner of the company or the CEO or the founder of the company, you make the presentation. You take them through every page step by step, because that same person who was reading that pitch deck by themselves, if you're presenting to them, They may stop you in the middle of your presentation, say, I don't understand that terminology. Can you explain a little bit deeper there? And you explain it, and then you move on. You control the presentation, and that investor is very happy that you addressed their question.
You know, John, I totally agree. And me coming from the background of having an agency, SEO and marketing agency, I totally agree that you have to present, like in my case, I need to present everything to my client personally, because it's true, they ask questions. If I send it over to them, they don't understand half of the things, and
right.
they might miss something, and that will create a wrong impression. So I
That's right.
totally agree, even on my side, that you
That's
have to
right.
do
And
that
here's the,
person.
and here's the other do. Here's a really important. Enthusiasm carries you miles into a
Really?
presentation. And if you're doing the presentation verbally in person on a Zoom call, and you're walking them through your PowerPoint, your enthusiasm can have people be enrolled into your company.
So then how is it, what do you think about building rapport? Because if you're talking to them on a Zoom call and they're not excited, they just like, in their mode, and you're all overly excited, can it be a wrong sign for the investors that it might be something wrong there?
No, no.
No?
Remember our podcast from last week. We talked about the psychology of investors and what they listen through the filters. And one of
Yeah.
those was smoke and mirrors. So you're not.
The
So
the
you're. So if
filter.
you're, yeah, through the filter. So if you're doing the presentation, they're going to see you're so committed, and your speaking is so emphatic, and you love and you live and you breathe your business, and you love your concept and the idea, and you stand behind your company no matter what, a hurricane can't knock you over. They're going to get it.
That's
So
cool.
bringing enthusiasm to any storytelling, or
Mhm.
look at doing a presentation with a pitch deck is storytelling.
That's
You're
true.
telling your story, how you came up with the idea, how you built the company, how you enrolled your uncle and your aunt into giving you your first $25,000, and look at it opened up your door, and this is where you are now, and now you can go out, now you're asking for bigger money. That's exciting,
You make me excited now, you know?
right? And then and
That's
then
true.
and then you
Mhm.
have the PowerPoint to back up your excitement. You have the blueprint. So,
Really good
so
points.
a big deal for me is don't send out your pitch deck to anyone. Go ahead and do it in person with them initially. Now,
Nice.
if you're raising a lot of money, you may not be just in the friends and family round. You may be out into the first the seed round in raising money for your company. This is where it's important to have your business plan and your executive summary, because you do the pitch deck and someone may say, an investor may go, "This is great. Do you have the assumptions to back up that financial page?" Remember we talked about that in the last podcast? Yes, I do, Mr. or Mrs. Investor. I have a whole business plan. Great. We'll send that to you after we've done this, after we've gone through the pitch deck. So
Interesting.
it all ties together. So, telling the story and being passionate about what you do is so important because it's infectious. When you're passionate, I can be passionate about, toilet paper. People get excited about it. I can get people excited about anything. So that's one of the do's. The other do's. So you're telling the story. The other do that you want to put into your presentation is, it's more than just an idea. You want to make sure when you're pitching, you're working with your pitch deck, that you've done some kind of a beta test, you've tested the market, you've done some sales, you've reached out and touched customers, you have some validation. The investor is looking for validation, even if you're coming out of the gate just raising capital in your first friends and family round. So they want, even if you're just going to your uncle and your aunt or your parents or a friend or a cousin and saying, "Hey, would you like to invest $10,000 in my company?" They want to see that there's some validation. So you want to get some of that done. Just having a great idea doesn't get you to first base. You've got to do some legwork. So that's a do. And then really, you want to be really, and I use the word emphatic. And the word emphatic, the definition is you want to be to the point. You want to be to the point. You want to make your points, and you want to move on in the PowerPoint presentation, and you want to control the meeting. You may get interrupted. Sometimes you'll be having an investor that asks a question every time you talk. Every time you do a point, they have a question. Now, if it gets out of hand, you can always say to that person, I request that everyone holds their questions till the end, write them down, and we'll go back into, we'll answer every one of your questions one by one. And that keeps you on point. It also keeps you from getting rocked off your enthusiasm.
That's true.
Because if someone keeps interrupting you, all of a sudden it kind of takes the wind out of yourself. So those are the do's. Now let's talk about the don'ts. So here are some don'ts that you definitely want to not do. So again, you don't want to go longer than 20 slides or 20 pages is a recommendation on most pitch decks. You don't want to have too many words, more graphics, more images. Making your point is better than having a lot of content. Don't provide excessive financial details at this level. That can be drilled down in a whole nother meeting or a whole nother conversation. So like on your page, it was page 13 that I talked about. That was your financials in the pitch deck. You want to have a pie chart or graph about your projections, what you're going to do in 3, 4, 5 years. You want to talk about use of proceeds. Simple. Just keep it real simple. So don't try to cover everything in the pitch deck. Don't try to stick a whole bunch of information in the pitch deck. If there's too much information, it could overwhelm your investor. Don't use a lot of don't use a lot of jargon or acronyms.
Example, please.
Well, we have an ASI system that needs a 3-level generator.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, what is it? What?
What is it?
Yeah, don't put a lot of jargon into or acronyms that are going to trip up the investor. You can leave those later. You can be more technical with them later. Don't put those into the business plan. Don't belittle the competition. We talked about that. Don't knock the competition. Don't use outdated metrics or data. Make sure all your data is current. Don't use a research report from 1985 and today's 2021. Make sure your data and your metrics are current. Don't use bad graphics and don't use low quality images. You know this, you tell this to your clients, right? You want to be professional. Hey, you're asking for $250,000 from investors. Make it look like a $250,000 ask. Make it look like a $250,000 presentation.
That's so true. Good point.
Do not, and again, do not try to cram your entire business plan into a 20-page pitch deck, because that's exactly how it will present. Let's talk about preparation. So those are the do's and the don'ts. So let's talk about preparation. I always say preparation is key. Practice, role playing, mirror work. Mirror work. So I come from an area of sales, although I was a former chief operating officer. But before you do a presentation, do your presentation into the mirror. Do it multiple times, because it takes you a while to get home and used to the person you're looking at, which is me, which is you, in the mirror. It's a great exercise. It really brings you home. So preparation's key. Also, do role playing with your spouse before you do the presentation to investors. Do it with your children. If your children are college students, they can give you some feedback. Do it with friends. Do it with a business partner. Do it with other people who are in the industry. Hey, I'm going to be doing a presentation next week, a Zoom call. I want to do a presentation with you. Would you give me some critiquing?
Nice.
That really helps in presentation. I never do a presentation without it. I did mirror work before I came on here.
You did?
I did.
I will start to.
Did.
You did good?
Yeah. And then if on a Zoom call, dress like you're asking for $250,000.
Okay.
If that's what your ask is, it's important. Again, and control the presentation. Be open to Q&A interruptions. But investor questions are good during the presentation, but make sure you stay on point and you keep driving. You're managing the call, not them. And then the close. You were going to say something?
Well, I was just asking, I would want to ask you for example of like the worst pitch deck you had with your clients, or like,
The worst pitch deck
well,
I
like,
had. I
well,
don't put out worse. I don't put out bad pitch decks, but the
well,
worst experience I
okay,
had. Yeah, I'll
this,
tell you. That's a really important question, Kate. I'll tell you what happened to me.
let me
I was
clarify.
doing. Yep.
Just something that went out of your control. That's something
Yeah.
that you learned from, not like a
Yep.
bad pitch
This
deck,
is
but
what I
yeah.
learned from. Yep. This is what I learned from. I learned not to do group presentations
Mm.
when the group doesn't really know each other.
Oh,
You might have some strangers in there, because it takes one negative person to stop you in your presentation and ask a question. And this person just may be a negative person in general, or he or she may be looking to trip you up. I had that happen in a presentation once. This guy was just nasty. He was mean. He was, I don't know if he was there because someone told him to go to the meeting, but he didn't want to be there. But you could tell in his questions and what he did, because he was so negative, he pulled in other investors who weren't negative into his conversation,
no way. Wow.
saying things like, well, you know, I don't think you guys are going to be successful. I don't
Mm,
think you guys really have the product you're talking about. I don't think you can pull it off. I've had those guys in my presentations before.
mm,
Now, very rare it happens, but you got to be ready for them. But that guy started to put, you get all these other people thinking, what is he looking at that I'm not looking at? What does he know that I don't
that's
know? So that's an example. That's why I always say group presentations can be really dangerous sometimes.
true. You
So,
mean,
but yeah,
mhm. Sorry, you mean like group presentation you said from people that don't know each other, but who invited that person? Like in your case, was it some
yeah.
of the
Well, remember
investors?
we talked about that in the last podcast, and you talked about a little bit in the beginning. Always know your audience, right? Always do a little bit of due diligence. Always find out what their background is. I always want to know who I'm going to talk to if I'm raising money, their background, because it can help me in the conversation. If I'm presenting to an investor and I'm representing a medical device company, and I know that he or his brother, let's say his brother is a physician and a surgeon, that's really good information to have.
That's true. Yes.
So know your audience as much as you can,
Good.
as much as
Yeah,
you can.
such a
And then
good
the
point.
last, yeah, and then the last thing is your action step. Never complete a presentation without an action step. Thank them and tell them, thank them for the questions that they asked, and you're available to do one-on-one conversations with them. And I know you're going to have a bunch of questions after you're going to go back, and I'm going to leave the PowerPoint and the pitch deck with you. You're going to have more questions,
Mm,
and I will circle back with you in a few days just as a follow-up. Let them know what you're going to do.
nice,
So
nice.
that's kind of how you close it out.
John, it's so useful. You have so much knowledge about the industry, and just sharing even your bad pitch deck experience, I think will help our audience to get better prepared for their pitch deck.
It happens to the best of everybody. I actually do have a pitch deck I can share with you.
Yes,
I can share the screen.
yes.
Okay, great. So this is a pitch deck. This is a company that came to me. They're out of Quebec, Canada. They came to me to help them present. Now, this was not a startup company. This was not even an early stage company. This was a later stage company. Their total ask was 148 million.
Wow.
They
Okay.
were acquiring their competitors. They were going to go create. They're going to capture and create the entire market. So, and I won't get into too many details, but here's the opening. Remember the opening? You announce your company, what you do. They have a proprietary software for in-room hotels. It's a touch screen, and it goes into all the major hotels for ordering food services, the concierge services. So they're creating the best-in-class assembly of companies. This was a pitch deck I put together for them, and so they started off the company with about the company. They started in 2009, and they were out raising money. This is the last time they're going to raise, but here's their product. They had something called the HSAN Navigator Smart Screen Technology. And this was in hotel rooms. They're already in Hilton's. They're in the MGM. They're in the Marriott's. So they're across the world in hotels, and so they had quite a big market share. So then it talked about, so they're right now one of the world's largest industries. Most of the 17 million rooms still provide a manual printed directory, telephone, TV, remote control, clock, radio, room lighting, and thermostat control. We've combined and put everything into our software technology. It's in a touchpad that you can pick up and carry with you, even sitting in bed ordering.
This is interesting.
And then they talk about the milestones, what they accomplished. So this is a company, again, it's not an early stage company, it's a later stage company.
Mhm.
They are in approximately, they were at the time, this was in 2017 when they were doing the raise. They were in approximately 10,000 rooms, hotel rooms, major hotels, Chicago, San Francisco, Hilton, Chicago, Palmer House, Chicago, Drake Hotel, Chicago, Marriott Marquis, the Room Hilton Square. So these were all the hotels they were already in. They were a successful company. They were already making money. These were their major partners, which was IHG, Hilton, and Marriott. And again, they were presenting this to investors to raise enough capital to acquire their competitors.
Mhm.
And then they talked about the opportunity. Remember, we talked, I think, on page 5, the solution. So this is them talking about the opportunity to become one of the number one, the biggest player in the industry if they accomplish this goal.
Oh,
So we keep scrolling down. Again, this is with the assembly of this group of SAS companies, HCN instantly creates a 1 million room footprint. They were going to go from basically 15,000 rooms to 1 million rooms globally by this acquisition.
wow.
It was a huge step. They talk about the plan to scale. Again, this is this PowerPoint in this pitch deck probably took about, we did it pretty fast. We did it in 4 weeks, and I was working side by side with the CEO, and we both wrote this together, the chairman of the board. Talks about growth, market share, innovation, portfolio of offerings, the talent, culture, process. They get into the target acquisition. Remember, we talked about that in 6, the market opportunity on page 6. They get into this. These are the companies that were acquiring Alice, No Cross, Valera, Phone Suite, Pure HD. These are all
So
the
multiple
companies.
companies,
What's
right?
that?
Multiple companies.
Multiple companies, yeah. And so we, at the same time we were writing this pitch deck, that we had contracted a company out of Florida that does valuations on companies. They were going out and doing the valuations at the same time.
Oh, nice.
So we were getting the true valuations. So here they have some graphics in here on the right side. It's best in class hotel technology suite, talks about what they do, entertainment, communications, back office operations. On the left side, it talks about the 5 companies they had in their target that were going to roll up. So the reason they were rolling these companies up, some of these companies had some technology that this company didn't have. And they thought if they went out and they acquired them and brought them all under one roof as a major merger and acquisition, they'd be a big player in the industry. They'd be the player in the industry. And then COVID hit. And I'll talk about that. It's actually in the business plan. They talk about COVID. Because we know when COVID hit, one of the biggest, one of the industry sectors that really took a hit was hospitality, hotels, food, travel, entertainment. So here were the companies that they were, here were the hotels they were in, and some of the hotels they were targeting to go into. They were in Legoland, Holiday Inns, MGM, Omnis.
Mhm.
Yeah, huge, big reach, worldwide, AKA. So, and then they get into the executive management team. We talked about this on page 3. They have it down a little bit further, but the executive management team is really important always. And in this particular case, they had an award-winning management team. The chief operating officer of the company and the founder of the company took their original company in 1980 to the public market, did 240 million in sales. And so these guys were really the real deal. But then they had their chief product officer, who was originally is 20 years with Marriott International. So they had all the right guys on this deal. And then they had their advisory board, and some of these guys like Carl Wilson. Carl Wilson was former executive vice president of Marriott International from 1997 to 2011. So he was on the board. So they had big people in this company who believed in the company. And this is my point. When you're doing a presentation, one of the first places that investors look, they look at the human capital. They look and they look. Remember, we talked about in the last podcast. Remember the filter? Can they execute? Will they execute? Well, you look at this management team, you're like, yes, They will.
They've
They have
done
the
it before.
connections. Yeah, heavies in this plan. And then we get down here. Mr. Abji was the member of chair of the audit committee for the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Again, all these guys, big players. Then they get into the research reports, and they did a whole bunch of research reports. And if we were to click on these, we'd go out of this, we go on to the research reports. Again, that's what they were selling. They're in all the hotel rooms now. And they get down here, there's more links. The Marriott International launches global cleanliness. So one of the things that this product did, one of the things that the hotels do now, is they have indicators in the hotel rooms that shows that the room is COVID free or clean free.
Wow.
And that's part of the software technology coming on board now for the hotels, which is important.
This is like super unique.
Yeah, very unique. So here's their capital raise. We're requesting 141 million. Acquisition targets 94%, 133 million goes to the targets. 8 million is left for working capital. So if you're an investor, you're looking at that going, that's really healthy. And then again, remember I talked about graphics? Here's the pie chart. Where are they spending most of their money? Sales and marketing. Investors love that. Where are they spending most of the money in the other area? Research and development. They love it.
Wow.
Get down here to revenue assumptions. So this particular pitch deck was a little bit more detailed, but again, they had a 94-page business plan behind this pitch deck with all the assumptions. So, and now what's really interesting, you see right here where it says impact of COVID-19. We will see a lot of those statements and a lot of projected gross revenue between 2019, 2020, and probably the next few years, because COVID-19 has impacted people's business models. They've impacted the way they do their business. They've impacted how they raise money. They've impacted their projected gross revenue here. That's what they put in there. And that's why the revenue was off, because it impacted COVID-19. And then you get into consolidated forecast. And here's all the companies they're acquiring. And this is all the bar graph of what they think the revenues will show post acquisition.
Nice. Wow.
Shareholder value. Remember we talked about shareholder exit. How do shareholders get out? Talks about this. To reach viable IPO range within 24 to 36 months after launching this. And then the contact. So that's an example. That is an example of a pitch deck. And again, this is not a startup company in an early stage. This is a later stage company. But again, pitch decks are so valuable to work with investors. And they did this pitch. And again, the chairman of the board of this company, when he did the pitch deck, when he did the pitch in the presentation, they never sent it to any investor. They would do the Zoom calls, and he would walk through the entire pitch deck doing a presentation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
He knew, right, that he not.
Well, he knew this is his baby. He created the company, so there isn't anyone better than the chairman. And remember, he brought enthusiasm to it. He was storytelling, and he had all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. And he had all the right people in the company. And this was a really nice deal for them. So that's an example.
So everything worked out for them, or where are they at?
They're still raising capital. It didn't work out because COVID-19 was an interruption during the capital raise, just like our friend, I won't mention his name, but the guy that I'm working with that you introduced me to, he started this company right when COVID hit. Remember the food company is from Italy. So he got impacted. So, but again, today's podcast was really talking about the pitch deck. We're going to have another podcast where we're going to drill down on the business plan. We're probably going to have multiple podcasts on the business plan because it's so extensive.
Oh yeah, John recently shared with me his recent business plan that he wrote for one of his clients, and I never seen something like that before. So I hope all our audience can enjoy our following podcast. Thank you so much, John. And it was nice having you.
Cool. Look out for the bear.